Hey guys, I am getting ready to make some potato pancakes. We had potato tacos last night, and they were supposed to be for breakfast this morning, the potato pancakes were, but I am running a bit behind, so we're almost at lunchtime. I'm going to throw this together real quick, and I wanted to show you on the video how simple it is. You will note from the video of my cookbook that basically I keep just notes on my cooking recipes, and if I find one that really works for me, that I like the texture and the flavor, then that's when I jot down what I've done correctly, and I always put a footnote on it, excellent, so that's my go-to recipe. So with potato pancakes, I had tried several over the years, and I think one of the things why most people's potato pancakes fail is because they don't know how to handle the frying oils. Okay, usually you don't get them hot enough, and when you don't get the oils hot enough in anything you fry, that item becomes greasy. So the first important thing is to make sure that your shortening or your oil or whatever you're using is hot. And you can do it in butter too. You don't have to use a shortening or a lard. All right, so you can use fresh mashed potatoes. The whole thing about leftover mashed potatoes is, one, you're kind of thinking in advance, so a good portion of the job is done. And also, they firm up a lot. So when you're working with them, when you're putting your other ingredients in, it just kind of makes it easier to work with the patty. Patty cake, patty cake. Okay, all right, down here. Okay. So I'm going to add, I've got about 4 to 5 cups of mashed potatoes, rough estimate. Okay, and I'm going to add, real quick, that egg.
They're self-crying.
I'm going to add about 3 eggs, or see if they add themselves. Okay, I put a little salt right into the potatoes. Now, we use a lot of red pepper, cayenne pepper. I use a little bit of black, but when it comes to this particular recipe, that's what I like to put in it. And then I add a little bit of flour. The important thing about the potatoes is that they're not too soupy. If they're too soupy, it takes longer to fry. You stand more of a chance of them getting greasy, and you just want to avoid the greasy effect. What you're kind of after is just something similar to a pattied hash brown. If you find it that your mixture is too soupy, you can add more flour or more potatoes. I try to reserve some leftover mashed potatoes back just in case I need to add more, that I find that it's too liquidy. And just mix it up.
Are you cold?
I'm so blue over you. All right, so that's a little bit, it's not bad, but I want it a little stiffer, so I'm going to add just a little bit more flour to it. A couple tablespoons. Maybe a couple more. Okay, so that's more along the lines. It could even be a little stiffer if you wanted it. I'm not going to worry about it though. I'm low on flour. I'm going to be using wheat flour this morning to dip it in before I put it in the hot oil. Usually with this type of stuff, I like to use white flour. It has a better crust on it for the deep fry. We do so little deep frying that I want the best end result as possible. Okay, I want to show you how I checked my oil to make sure it was hot enough. I took just a little bit of the potato batter and put it in there, and see how that's all bubbly? That indicates that I'm at a good temperature there. So I'm going to shut my stove down because I've got my drafts open to help get the heat going on. I'm going to shut it down to try to maintain my temperature as much as possible. So like I said, this morning I'm going to use wheat flour. I had a little bit of white flour left I threw in there. I'm going to mix that up though to try to get it to spread out. So then you don't want to take your patties and have them too thick. There's the problem. If you get them too thick, it takes longer to fry. So you just dip them in your flour. See how that holds together? Okay. Come on over here. You just gently lay them in the oil. Now, if you don't want to get your hand that close to the oil, you can use a spatula. Just make sure that it's good and floured so it doesn't stick to the spatula, that it slides off it instead. And they will, you know, if they're a little too sticky still, they're going to stick to your hands. So that may be a good indicator if you're having a hard time with them to put more flour in, or just be ready to flour your hand as soon as you have to when pattying them up. Alright, I'll show you what I mean about using this. See, we're all nicely floured, so I can tilt that on there, and then I can just slide that down in there if I'm worried about getting my hand too close to the oil. Maybe a little bit. Alright, so when you're frying on a wood stove, and I know I've talked about this in previous videos, but it stands to mention again, you have low, medium, and hot. This is typically, it's not always that way, your hottest area. But if your draft is coming over your oven, that can switch also to make this area your hottest area. But as rule of thumb, hot, medium, low. Again, it depends on how your drafts are set, how your fire's burning, if it's able to wrap around the oven. You know, if you have too many coals on top of your oven, that decreases where the heat disperses itself, where the heat disperses itself. But in this case, the one thing what I'm wanting to tell you folks is if you're doing this on a wood stove and you've got your oil right at the temperature you want it to be, I can get right down in there, and you think that's a perfect temperature, still keep an eye on it, because it doesn't take much for that fire to shift, and you can either, the temperature can drop too much and then you're not going to get the end product that you want, you're going to get a soggy product, or you're going to possibly create a flashpoint problem with the oil you're working with. I've been using a wood stove 365 days a year for how many years now? For close to 10 years. I've only ever, I think there's been one for sure, possibly twice, I'll give myself some leeway, where I had a problem on the stovetop. And it was with my waffle iron. It wasn't even with the oil and its flashpoints. But it's really frightening when you have a fire on your stove. That can happen with any stove, but you have to be just more cautious. And once you get the flow of it, once you get things moving, you really can tell real easy, and you know, it becomes second nature, certain things. But when it comes to possible problems with any type of fire, it's always best to have that checkpoint in the back of your head. Pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. All right, so these things are ready to flip already. I'm going to flip one and let you see the handles.
Too hot to handle.
I left that up so you could see how brown that is. That's been in there less than 5 minutes. Chase them.
Potato steaks.
And also, flipping these with this, like when I do donuts, I use a fork because I want to be able to control my product going down into my oil. Using a spatula, if you were just to flip it over, you would splatter oil all over. So it's really important to either lay it against another product or be able to manage it real slow. When I do fried foods, I like to use a cloth to lay the fried food on in order to catch some of the grease off of it so that it's not soaking in grease. I do not use paper towels. It is a rare, I shouldn't say do not, it is a rare occasion. A couple times a year you might find a roll of paper towels in my home. We usually use just really inexpensive washcloths. Typically this allows us to reuse them multiple times. In this case though, this cloth will catch the grease so much, and I'm not going to try to wash it out. What I will do is I will put it into my wood stove and incinerate it. Oh, that one fell apart. Pretty doggone good. All right, guys, so that's how we do potato pancakes. It's a quick and easy meal. It's also very hearty for your hard workers. All right, we'll talk soon. God bless.